Hey friend, welcome to Everyday Imperfect, the podcast for busy people with imperfect faith. I'm Tabatha Rewis, pastor's wife, mom, author, speaker, and a very imperfect believer in Jesus. I've had to wrestle through some pretty dark times in my faith, all while keeping that mask of perfection in place. Till finally I realized that having faith doesn't mean that you don't have doubts or questions, and that doesn't make us less of a Christian either. It means we are a Christian with questions. And you know what? It's okay to have imperfect faith. We have a perfect God. So if your faith needs a little boost today, crank those AirPods up and borrow a cup of imperfect faith from us today. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome to today's episode of Everyday Imperfect. I'm super excited about today's episode because I'm actually going to be sharing not just a little bit of my story, but some things I've learned down the line that I really haven't had a chance to share so far. So if you have been listening for a while, or maybe you follow me on social media, or you are one of my church fam or know me in person, you know that we are launching a new company called Restore Collective, and I've been a part of that for almost a year now, getting everything started and put in production and development. There's so many balls to juggle when it comes to doing something like that. I had no idea, but thankfully I was invited upon this journey by Heather Burge, and she's graciously allowed me and Jerry to be a part of this company and from the ground up. So I'm very excited about that. Well, just a couple of weeks ago, we had our first event in Orlando, Florida, and I was asked to speak on making godly goals, not just in business, but life as well. And I've had the opportunity to do that several times in my life, and I really appreciated the opportunity to teach about what I've learned about making godly goals. Not just for business, but like even starting this podcast that I knew the Lord had put on my heart. I had to set goals to get that done. And by the way, we are coming up on the 1 year mark of having this podcast as a ministry. So praise God for that. But you guys know also in my life, I am a pretty busy person, and I don't wear that like a badge of honor. It's just who we are in our family. You know, I'm a pastor's wife. I have this ministry. I work outside the home. I'm a mom. We have my mother-in-law living with us. There's a lot of stuff going on. We have a lot of irons in the fire. And when I started my business years ago in direct sales, I knew that in order to do what I wanted to do with it, which is pay the bills, let's be honest, I'd have to work my business when I could and how I could, just kind of fitting it into the nooks and crannies of my busy schedule. And so I did that. Some would say I successfully built my business over a few years. I had decent reorders, which is a huge marker. If you're in direct sales, you want to be able to serve your people so that they trust you enough to keep ordering from you. I was active each month since the very beginning, meaning I was profitable, not just making my own commissions, but by helping other women make their commissions, I was making commission on them. Then beginning in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, I realized that my sweet husband, my pastor, my best friend, the enabler of all good things, who is here listening.
Hello.
I realized that year, or at the beginning of that year, that he was turning the big 50. And he absolutely loved that I pointed that out in this talk that I did a couple of weeks ago.
Not really.
Now, that was 5 years ago that he turned.
You didn't have to say that either.
But I knew then I would have to do something big for his big birthday. I wanted to. I made a huge goal. I remember talking to my mentor, Heather, who has just started the company Restore Collective. I talked to her in our guest bedroom, trying to be quiet and not let Jerry know what I was talking about, because I wanted her to know what my goal was for that year. And she was nothing but supportive. She is like the epitome of a ray of sunshine. Like, you cannot get her down, and she's always your biggest cheerleader. So I told her my big audacious goal for that year. I wanted to surprise my husband with a once in a lifetime vacation, his dream trip to Israel, something he literally had dreamed about probably his whole life. Wouldn't you say, babe?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it turns out not only did I meet that goal, but in doing so, I also qualified for an incentive trip to beautiful Costa Rica. Of course, COVID interfered and I never made it to Costa Rica. And we wound up having to reschedule the Israel trip 3 times before we could make it.
Yeah.
But in doing so, we also were able to add my son, Cole, to the trip as well. So that was a huge blessing. And we got to go to Israel as a family. By the way, if you haven't already watched it, there is a video of the day I gave Jerry his birthday present in my Instagram highlights. If you want to go and find me, my handle's at Tab Rewis, Tabrewis. You can find it in the Instagram highlights and just have yourself a feel good cry. It was amazing. Okay, now fast forward to this year. We are launching this brand new company, and I've been asked to talk about godly goals, and I just felt impressed to call it Grace Goals. And I thought this would be an amazing time to share with you, our listeners, some things I've learned about setting godly goals. For one thing, goals doesn't have to be monetary or just health related. It could be anything. I believe that we as human beings tend to work better with a goal in mind. And there's a few things, 3 particular things I want you to know about setting goals, whether it's a goal for your health, a goal for your side gig or side hustle, or maybe a goal for your main career. Maybe it's a goal for your ministry or your calling. I'm going to talk to you about these 3 things. The first thing is God is not opposed to goals. He just wants to be in them. Proverbs 16:9 says, "In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." You know, so many times we convince ourselves that if a goal or a calling isn't precisely found between the pages of Genesis and Revelation, or if it's something that you actually want, then it must not be from God, right? He would only want you to be miserable and tortured. No, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
So I want you to know this. Setting goals is not unspiritual, but doing it without God is definitely unwise. And I'll say it again, setting goals is not unspiritual. What matters is how and why we set them. You know, dreaming of that Israel trip, it wasn't just about me planning a vacation for my husband. It was about honoring my husband and the sacrifices he's made through the years for our family and for ministry. And I believe then, and I still believe now, that God delights in helping us to love and bless others. So, as you're planning your goals, don't just ask, "What do I want out of this?" I want you to ask, "God, what do you want to do through me in this?" Let me encourage you to invite God into your goal planning, into your goal setting adventure, to your planner, to your vision board, because that is where peace begins. That is where you'll find grace in your goals. Now, the number 2 thing I want to tell you, daily discipline leads to divine momentum. Galatians 6:9, we quote this a lot, and it says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good." And we know the end of that verse talks about, "Because in due season we will reap that which we have sown." Remember?
If we do not
If
faint.
we do not
Yes.
faint. So what I want to focus on is the do not faint part, and don't grow weary in doing good. John Maxwell is a leadership guru. Jerry will tell you he is the number one resource in all of leadership.
Yes, he is.
And he says, you will never change your life until you change something you do daily. The secret of your success is found in your daily routine. So, building my daily habits was maybe the simplest thing that I did to reach my goals. Notice I didn't say it was the easiest, but it was the simplest thing that I could do. And I'm going to let you know how to do that today, too. When I did this a couple of weeks ago at Restore Collective's Welcome Home event, I actually was able to give everyone there a copy of the Daily Grace Tracker, which I developed specifically for them. If you want to get a copy of that, just leave us a comment or a review, and I will do my best to get that to you, or even better, we'll put a link in the show notes and you won't have to wait on me. But I call this the Daily Grace Tracker, and I want to encourage you to remember this isn't about hustle. It's about developing holy habits that get you to your goals. And I'm going to say that again. Your Daily Grace Tracker is not about hustle, not seeing how much you can get done. It's about developing holy habits that help you to your goals. So, really quickly, I'm going to tell you the things that I included when I designed this Daily Grace Tracker, but know too that you can just take, like my friend Garrett does, just take a cheap one subject notebook from the dollar store and write down each little thing yourself and have your own tracker. Or you can go to our show notes and download the one that I created. So, what I did first is put the day and date up at the top. I wanted to let people know, and I want you to know, especially if you're working on business goals and honestly, even health goals. You do not necessarily need to work your business 7 days a week. And since I mentioned health goals, if you speak to anyone in the medical field, they will probably tell you if you are sedentary, don't set out to exercise an hour a day, 7 days a week. So, your first goal, you need to make sure you put in the right priority, whatever it is that you're working on as your goal. So, for example, with my business, I know that my business does not need to rise in priority above my faith and my family. But I also know that it does not need to sink below 20 other items on my to-do list either. I have to make sure I keep my priorities my priorities. Now, the second thing that I always try to do, and I encourage you to do, is to have gratitude. Did you know, and I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, so I really hope you remember this. Did you know that studies have shown that anxiety and gratitude cannot coexist at the same time? Your brain simply cannot process simultaneously those opposite or competing emotions. So let's be proactive about it. Name at least one thing each day that you're thankful for. Challenge yourself to write something different each day. No calling this in, friend. We know that we're all thankful for our kids and our friends and our family. Write something different each morning and then see how well your attitude increases, how much better it gets because you find yourself in more gratitude each day. Now, 3 is customer connections. In the very beginning of my direct sales business, I quickly learned that if I didn't stay in contact on a regular basis with people, they wouldn't know that I cared about them. And that was very, very important to me. I never wanted somebody to think that I was just there to make a sale. I wanted them to know that this was a ministry for me. And so, with that in mind, I want to encourage you to think of maybe 3 people each day that you can reach out to. Maybe it's not to build a business, but maybe instead it's to build community. Who is someone that you can reach out to just to say, hey, just to say, you know what, I'm thinking about you today. Hope you have a great day. Maybe it's someone in your church. Maybe it's someone you work with. Maybe it's someone you haven't talked to since high school. Find someone to reach out to and touch. Now, personal development. Give yourself grace on this, but I personally believe that personal development is one of the biggest investments that we should make. Now, I'm going to be honest, sometimes my personal development simply is just straight up Bible time. But honestly, it needs to happen. Whether you are listening to a John Maxwell book or reading a John Maxwell book, maybe you're listening to a podcast, maybe you're doing some kind of workshop or online course specifically to develop skills within you, do something that will help you to develop yourself personally. Now, also on this is 3 priorities each day that you're either working your business or you're focusing on your health or whatever your goal is that you're working towards. Maybe it's increasing your prayer time. What are 3 priorities you can work on today? Now, in my business, maybe it's reaching out to a hostess. Maybe it's checking in with my mentor. Maybe it's creating content. Prioritize whatever you need to have done that day. And if you don't get to do it, if you don't get to cross it off, just move it to the next day. Give yourself grace on this, but again, know your priorities. Maybe in speaking of the spiritual side of things, maybe your goal for increasing your prayer time is to make sure that you take a portion out of your lunch break just to pray. And if you don't get to do that, it's okay. Do it the next day. Just make sure you make it a priority the next day. Now, I also want to tell you guys again, having this planner in place does not mean that you will be cemented into something. Use this as a tool to help you meet your goals. No, it doesn't have to be 100% every day. I mean, it would, but we are imperfect. So know that it's not going to be 100% every day, perfectly done. Give yourself grace. We are so good at giving grace to others, but when we need to give it to ourselves, sometimes we fall short. So while you may not show up every day 100%, remember this: every time you do show up, even in the small ways, working towards whatever goal it is that God has placed on your heart, you are planting seeds that build a bigger story. And those daily decisions done in grace will bear fruit. So, sis, friend, listener, whoever it is that's listening to this, I just want to ask you, what is your goal? What are you planting seeds towards? Now, the last thing I want to mention when it comes to working towards and setting your goals, peace doesn't come from avoidance, it comes from obedience. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." Now, I know that some of us listening today are already feeling behind because we've made ourselves a promise at some point and we feel like we've already failed, or maybe we're afraid that we're going to make ourselves this promise and we're going to wind up falling off the wagon anyway. We all have felt that way, but here's the truth. Peace doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from just doing the dang thing. If you've been waiting for peace to show up before you move towards your goal, you've got it backwards. Move in obedience, and peace will meet you there. Most of the time, obedience is simply making the next right move, taking the next right step. In our church, we explain it this way. When your kids get up each morning, do they need to come to you to ask, "Oh, mother, forgiver of life and gummy vitamins, whatsoevereth is thy will for me today?" No, of course not. They know they need to get up and go potty, brush their teeth, get dressed, right? So for us, working towards our goals is just as simple as doing the next right thing. It's just that common sense obedience. So take the time each day to do a quick inventory of sorts. Find out what your next right thing is and do the dang thing. Now, I believe that if you're listening to this, then God has called you for something. God is in this. I know He is. And I want to invite you to let your goals reflect His goodness. Let your daily habits reflect His grace. And I believe if you're called for this, He's already provided within you everything you'll need to walk out His plan, to hit those God-honoring, grace-filled goals, no matter what area in your life they're falling in. Remember this, you don't need to be perfect. He handles all the perfect parts for us. You just need to be surrendered. We can be imperfect and surrendered and let Him handle the outcome. So, friend, I hope that you have enjoyed this podcast today. I know that it was a little self-serving because this was so close to my heart since I just talked to my sisters at Restore Collective about this, but I just felt like some of you guys needed to hear this too. Go for the goals. I believe God gives you goals for a reason. So if for some reason you haven't hit a goal before, try again. There's a reason why He put that on your heart. I want to encourage you to dream with God. Include Him in your plans and goals. Take small daily steps in faith and walk each day in peace because He's already gone ahead of you. Hey friend, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. Check the show notes for any links and resources we may have mentioned, and please do me a big favor and leave us 5 stars on the podcast platform where you found us. And if you can't give us 5 stars, tell us how we can get those 5 stars. That's how other people can find out about us and the message we're trying to get out, that it's okay for us to be imperfect in our everyday life because we follow Jesus Christ, who is perfect for us. Also, if you'll go to the Buzzsprout link in the show notes, you can leave me fan mail. That's basically where you tell me what you think about the show and make suggestions for upcoming topics. I can't wait to hear from you. Now, please share this imperfect episode with your imperfect friends and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode releasing soon.